what makes a fight a super fight? Is it decided, you know, with marketing, okay, we're going to make this a super fight, or is it already understood that this has the elements of being a super fight? Is it a marketing thing, more or less, or is it really a matchup that constitutes being a super fight?
As a great fan of sports growing up, and then having the opportunity to lead a business venture in sports, I learned that there were two very different definitions of super fights. As a fan, super fights are what take place in the ring, and it's what you take away from a fight. It's when you walk away and you say, that is an experience that I'll never forget for years and maybe for the rest of my life. Then, as a businessman, I learned that a super fight could also be a commercially successful fight that reached levels that were unimaginable. I'm a student. I learned through doing scores and scores of pay-per-view fights in the early years what elements would make for a successful commercial fight. You didn't always know that a fight would be great, but you learned the attributes of the fighters in the ring and personality-wise that, if put together, would present an equation to the consumer that they had to have, that they just could not walk away from. And they had to push that remote control that night to watch the fight. But it took me scores of fights, not 2 or 3 or 5 fights, to learn that. Our very first fight, Holyfield-Foreman, April 1991, 1.4 million buys at $35.95 per buy, $53 million in one night, truly the night pay-per-view was born. Our very next fight, we had a magnificent fight between James Toney and Michael Nunn. Two great fighters, one of the best fights you could make in the sport. I remember sitting around a table with Seth Abraham talking about whether the fight would do 20% or 25 or 30% of what we just did with Holyfield-Foreman. Maybe it'll do 2, 3, 400,000 buys. 19,000 buys, 1 month after 1.4 million buys. That was the beginning of my education, that, you know, there were hits and misses in pay-per-view. And I learned as a student to identify the factors of what it would take to make it a hit. And then I was fortunate to also have many fights that in the ring delivered, but there were also many that didn't. And the trick was to learn how to convince the consumer next time out that it was not just worth their time, but again, worth their money.
Right.
Because you didn't necessarily know it would be a great fight in the ring. But right. It was a great equation to learn the balance of and to put together over the years. And as I said, we were successful more often than not. Almost every fight we did was successful for the fighters and successful for HBO, and it was something I was very proud of.